there is a moment in the process of creating our 3D images or animations. There is a moment that changes everything, and that's the moment of hitting the magic button render. It changes everything, it redefines our world. It's the moment of the truth. There's no way back. We redefine the world that we live in. We are no longer in a 3D world. We're converting our 3D world into 2D image. So there are several things that we simply cannot change anymore. We don't have the access to such things like objects, lights, shaders. The only thing that we are left with are the pixels and their colors. So our options are limited, but still there are several things that we can do. And this is what I'm going to talk about during this little presentation. Let's, for example, take such image. It's an image, it's a 3D render, some credits. Okay? So, this image has been created by my friend Ernest, who simply wanted to make some tests, and he gave several render passes to me so that I could play with them and just show the effects to you. And this is the result of some things that I managed to do with this image. And when playing with it, I tried several options. This is the look that I liked the most, but I also tried something like this, or I tried something like this, or this. And then when I made several trials of this kind, so just how to get the overall look that I like, then I thought that it would be good to play with some details. So, for example, what about going for some crazy colors of the sofa? I tried several colors of the sofa, and then I decided that the first one was the best. But I couldn't really be sure about it before I tried. So I tried it. Then I kept thinking about at this image, and I thought maybe you see that there is a light coming from outside. This is the sun, and maybe this light is a little bit too strong, so maybe I should lower its energy. So I tried several options, and finally I turned it off completely. So all of those changes are done after rendering, so playing only with the pixels, with the colors. And here is the original image, I mean the raw render, but the point is that this is not completely true that I was working only on this image, because I got several other images to my disposal. I simply had several render passes. And here I am showing you those render passes with their names. And for example, those three are interesting because here we have this scene is illuminated using 3 light sources. And here we have the separate access to each of those light sources. So that's why I was able to turn the sun off. Right? Normal pass. This is a technical pass. So it shows the angles. And we have also many other passes that we can play with. This is interesting. This allows me to treat several parts individually. Like I didn't have to draw the shape of the sofa, but I simply got some information from this image. I could really easily key the sofa out and use this key as a mask for my effects. And this way I could easily change the color of the sofa itself without changing anything else. Shadows. This may seem a little bit weird. When we are thinking about the shadows, we rather imagine something looking completely different than this one. But I will come back to it a little bit later. This is how VRay renders the shadows. And when I explain the concept behind it, it will become clear why this one looks like this. Specular pass, subsurface scattering, Z-depth. So as you can see, and this is the Z-depth that we got from VRay, and it looks a little bit different than our Z-depth that we are used to in Blender. It's first of all inverted, and the values are mapped a little bit differently. In fact, it's you can set those values yourself. Okay, so the idea here is to render many elements and combine them together. When we render many elements, we have individual access to all of them, and then when we combine, we have simply better control over what we are doing in compositing. And there are two things. We deal with render layers and we deal with render passes, and those are the definitions that are not Blender specific, but generally some things are called render layers and some other things are called render passes. Let's take a look at such image, pretty simple. And when we have something like this, this is a render layer. I have rendered some elements of this image separately, in this case this dome, right? And then I have another render layer where I have some objects rendered separately, another object rendered separately, and then I can treat those objects individually and combine them together. And then there is a concept of render passes. So what is rendered, those are several aspects of the image. Like every single image has the diffuse component. So we can have this diffuse component rendered separately. So for example, this is the diffuse component, right? Reflections, only the reflections. It may look a little bit similar to the image that I showed you when I was explaining the render layers. It is very similar to one of the render layers, but it's only because only those two objects have anything that is reflective. Here we have the refraction. So one of those balls is made of glass, so that's why it has the feature of refraction. Direct diffuse, something, this is just the direct light. We can separate the aspects of the image various ways. Like we can talk about the diffuse, so the diffuse behavior of the surface, reflections, reflection behavior of the surface, transmission or refraction. But we can also talk about the light influence. We can have direct influence of the light sources or indirect influence of the light sources. In this case, we are looking at the diffuse, and this is the light that hits the surface directly from the light source. But we also can have the bounced light, so something that in the whole world except Blender is called global illumination. This, for example, raw diffuse direct. So this is the influence of the lamps, but without the color that it's interacting with. Here we have something different. This is raw lighting, and I am purposely showing the mixture of the render passes that come from completely different worlds. So here we have some passes that come from cycles, some passes that come from VRay. I am just showing the general idea of this. When we take a look at something like this, this is the direct light. This is how Cycles understands direct light. So we have the influence of the lamp, and here we have the lamp. But in this pass we also have the influence of the sky. Sky is treated as the light source. So direct influence of the sky will also be included here. This is something that in VRay is called lighting. So theoretically, this represents exactly the same thing. But in VRay, when we get this pass, we don't get the influence of the sky. The sky is not treated as the light source. So it's not included in this pass. And here we have the indirect. So this is only the bounced light. Global illumination. This is how it's called in the whole world. But as you can see, and this should be something that should be exactly the same. This is a indirect light, diffuse indirect, that comes from cycles. And this is global illumination. But the difference between this one and this one is that here we have the influence of the sky. It's not a big issue when we combine those things together. It's because when we add one to the other, we will have the influence, the diffuse influence of everything. But it's good to know where, for example, the influence of the sky, where it is stored. Then we have the diffuse color. This is how it's called in cycles, and in VRay it's called diffuse filter. So when we combine the two, when we take the influence of the light, the raw influence of the light, and multiply it by this color, filter it by this color, we have the whole diffuse. Glossy direct, glossy indirect, glossy direct plus glossy indirect. So in diffuse components, everything behaves exactly the same. And then we have the glossy color. When we multiply one by the other, we get this. This is something that I showed you at the beginning. So now it's time to see some action. I mean, I told you several things about the passes, but in fact, it's really better when we open Blender and try to see what we have to our disposal. It's a little bit weird. I'm used to widescreen, but okay. Here we have the access to the render layers and render passes.
Can you make the DPI higher? It's very hard to see. Set it to 100. Good.
Better? Better.
Thank you.
You're welcome, always. Okay. At the beginning I told you about the idea of render layers and render passes. Here we have the access to render layers, so we can say that, for example, some objects that are in layer 2, layer 3, or 4 will be rendered in this render layer. We can add more render layers and simply say which objects will be rendered. So those are the render layers. And for each render layer, we have the render passes, and we activate them here. The render passes that get combined together to recreate the final image are those ones. So we have direct and indirect influence of the diffuse and the color. So here are the diffuse components. Here we have the glossy components, direct, indirect, and color, transmission, so refraction in other words, and subsurface scattering. When we enable those passes and then emission and environment, we have the formula. When we render all of them, we will get the access to those individual passes, and there is a formula that will allow us to combine all this together. When we render this and go to Compositor, here we, in the render layers input, we have the access to all of those things. Now, there is a formula, but this formula is not that much important. Like, it's good to know how to combine the things, but of course we are the artists and we can combine the things completely differently if we like and if we understand what we are doing. The formula of combining the render passes together, I will use node sufficiency tools because it will be easier for me to combine the render passes. Node sufficiency tools, the tool that is included in Blender, so simply search for node sufficiency tools and enable it, and this gives us access to several additional keyboard shortcuts. So, in order to recreate the combined pass using the cycles render passes, we take diffuse components, take the glossy components and transmission components and subsurface components, and we add them together. Then on top of this we add emission and environment. In order to create the diffuse, the combined diffuse, we have to take the direct and indirect and add them together and multiply it by the color. We do exactly the same with all of the other components. So here I will quickly do it. But first thing, what I am doing right now, I am using some tools that are from node sufficiency tools. Now I have the individual access to every single image of this one, but it's not that easy to see what they represent, so I will copy the label from the names of those outputs, and now I see what I am doing. So, as I said, I take diffuse direct and diffuse indirect and add them. Then I multiply the result by diffuse color. Then do the same here. Plus times color. Transmission direct plus transmission indirect times transmission color. Subsurface direct plus subsurface indirect times subsurface color. And then I take emission and environment and take all those and add them. Okay, so that's the formula, right? And it's pretty easy. And when we take a look at the names here, they say it all. When I am looking at the render passes that come from other render engines, and I try to really understand what they represent, I always go back to Blender and try to figure out what they mean in Blender's terms, because those terms seem pretty logical. When something is, okay, diffuse indirect, we know what it is. Or, I don't know, glossy direct. Specular, what does it mean? Well, in fact, specular is glossy direct, because what is glossy direct? It's the reflection of the light source itself. Specular is the reflection of the light source. And especially, this logic can be seen especially in the diffuse components. Because, well, indirect, so the light that doesn't directly hit the surface but indirectly hits the surface. It hits other surfaces and then bounces and hits our surface. Well, indirect, it's logical. Global illumination. I don't know. But, in fact, global illumination is the indirect light. Now, let's see this maybe in, I will open the image that I rendered, and I will really combine the passes. I have everything set up here using the input render layers. Right now I can relink it to this very easily. I simply select those nodes, shift select this one, and then do bam.
What did you get?
And I did use the node sufficiency tools, and this is keyboard shortcut link active to selected. The keyboard shortcut is Control. What is this? Control semicolon.
Okay. You could use the screencast.
No, not in node editor.
But you got a 3D view open, so we would just see it nevertheless.
Will we? Really?
Think so?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Anyway, it's here. It's link active to selected, use outputs names, and here are the shortcuts. So when I use shift semicolon, it will relink this one to this one, and so I can of course link it back, no problem. Like this. Easy enough. So now I can take a look at this, if I can. So here are the passes. Diffuse direct, indirect, and here they are added together and multiplied by this diffuse color, and here I have the whole diffuse influence, and here I have the glossy direct, glossy indirect, and glossy color. Those two get added and they get multiplied by this, so we got this. And then transmission, so we have transmission, so the refraction, we multiply it by the color of transmission, and we get this. Subsurface scattering, in this image I don't have any subsurface scattering, so we ignore this. Then emission, so I have this object, and here all of those components are added together. And this recreates the image. They look exactly the same. This is the combined pass.
Does this large node load all the images from the following selected? Does this large node load all images from the following selected?
This one. So the question was if this large node contains all of the images that I'm showing, right? This is the question. Yes, because this is the EXR, multi-layer EXR. So this image stores the information about various images inside. So this is only one file, but it stores several images inside. And this behaves exactly the same as the input render layers. So here I have the access to all of the passes, and here when I'm using this EXR, I am doing exactly the same. I splitted this into individual nodes so that it's easier then to use the tools, just to combine them. So that's why. But I could as well simply delete all of those, and I will get exactly the same. But I prefer to have them individually. Okay.
What are they good for?
Hmm?
What are those nodes good for?
Organizational stuff only.
Okay.
So it's like, sometimes I prefer, when I have this node here, and let's say that my tree gets really messy, and I simply want to, I don't know, take this one and add it somewhere, so I can simply grab the individual thing over here, and it's easier. But if you don't like it, don't use it. It's up to you. This is my preference. So.
Extended EXR format store everything?
Yes.
As the render layer?
Yes.
There's no difference at all?
No. No difference at all. It stores everything.
Does the EXR codes the pass that layer?
Does the
EXR stores them as layers, stores the passes as layers?
it's like this. It's here we have the channels, and if we have the render layers, Normally it is in the EXR format, it's like the name of the render layer, then dot, the name of the render pass. Okay? So if Blender sees those channels like this, it will interpret the first part as the render layer, so you will get the access to this here. And then the render passes that belong to this render layer, that has this first part of the name exactly the same, will be shown here. Okay?
What else can you use the EXR for? I mean, can you use it just in Blender or somewhere else?
Everywhere. Everywhere.
I've tried opening it in Photoshop, but it doesn't open it. It doesn't show.
The question was where can I use OpenEXR, and yeah, so I'm repeating the question simply for everybody. You can use it everywhere. I'm not sure if Photoshop doesn't have the ability to. No, Photoshop. In Photoshop you cannot use this multi-layer OpenEXR. I think there are some plugins for that.
There is.
There is a plugin for that, right?
You need to change the exposure to develop the 20-bit image. You need to develop it.
This is. You mean in Photoshop?
I think you open it in Photoshop and it shows
When-
32 minus, it doesn't show 8-bit, it shows 32.
Yes, and this is exactly how it should be.
But then it shows black screen.
I see. Okay. So there is a problem in Photoshop. This is the problem in Photoshop. First of all, Photoshop doesn't work in linear color space. And the second thing, it doesn't handle 32 bits pretty well. This is what I think. I don't know. I'm not an expert in Photoshop. What I know is that if you, for example, use this formula to recreate the final image from the passes, and you do it in Photoshop, it won't work. It simply won't work. As simple as this. Now, to move on, I will only show you some. I will only. This image, I have the render of this image from Cycles, and here we recreated this. And I also have exactly the same scene rendered in VRay, and I have the passes of this from VRay. But now, there is a little problem, which is where is it? I don't remember. I don't remember anything. Yeah, okay. I have the passes from VRay stored not in the multi-layer EXR, but in separate EXRs. So every single picture, every single file here represents one of the render layers. And now, how would you, in Blender, import all of this here to begin to work with it? Unfortunately, normally you can simply take the image and grab it over here and it will be there. But you can do it only with one image. You cannot do something like this. It won't work. Bam. Only one appears. No more. So that's a problem. But because I keep working like this, I created just a little add-on that solves this issue. Like I have something that is called import all images, and then I browse to the directory, and here I select the directory. I can select some file or not, and simply import all images. And if I want to have them in the compositor, add nodes, bam, pizza, and I got them here. And what's cool about this is that it also named them. But now those names are not very nice, so let's change them. I will remove some of the text. And also, whenever it says VRay, I don't need it. Bam. Okay. So now, more layers, more passes. And as you can see, this is not the image that I wanted to show you. Okay, so let's play with this one. Why not? For example, we have something like lighting. Okay, this is lighting, and we also have specular. Bam. Let's add one to the other. I hate this backdrop, but it seems that I will have to do it like this. Okay. Now, I took the lighting, which is the equivalent of Blender's Diffuse Direct, and I added the specular to it, which is the kind of equivalent to glossy direct in cycles. Because here I have something like light select, so one light, second light, and third light. If I add those three together, I get this, and this is exactly the same result like this, as this. You see some differences, here especially, and this is probably because some of the lamps is not included here. I don't know. There is some difference, but it's not that dramatic. But we have the pass that is called lighting, but we also have the pass that is called raw lighting. And there is a pass, so let's take this one, raw lighting, and there is a pass that is called diffuse filter. When we take a look at the equivalents in Blender, diffuse filter is diffuse color, lighting is diffuse direct. And when we take those two and multiply them, we get this. So this is raw lighting, so the lighting, I mean the diffuse direct without the influence of the color. And here we have this diffuse filter, which is in fact the color. We multiply one by the other, and we got exactly this, which is the lighting. Here we have some difference. Here on the candles, because here we also have the influence of subsurface scattering, and I don't know why it's different, but anyway, it works. It is possible to recreate this whole image from the passes that I have. Like one of the ways would be, for example, to take the lighting, which is a combined diffuse, then take global illumination, if I only can find it, and add the two. Okay. Now I will take specular, subsurface scattering, reflection, and refraction. If I take them and simply add them, I should get the image that looks exactly the same as something that is called RGB color, which is the equivalent of our combined pass. So as you can see, this is one way of combining the render passes, the VRay render passes. But this is not the only way. This is good when I want to treat the diffuse as a whole. individually, but I don't want to have the access to individual colors or something like that. Or I don't want to have the access to individual lamps. So this is the way to use, okay? Global illumination, okay, I can treat this individually. Specular, subsurface scattering, reflection, and refraction. When I add all of those together, I recreated the final image. Now, I can do something a little bit different. I can, for example, take those light selects, if I find them. But this, as I showed you, is a combination of lighting and specular. So when I add those together, I get exactly the same as this plus this. So in this case, if I use this setup, I should do something like this. So take all of the lights, and then I'll add the rest, add everything that is not included here. So, bam. The same, and the same. And there are several problems here, but of course I won't tell you about any of them because of lack of time. But for example, as you can see here, I have mixed in light select. When I have the influence of individual lamps, I have the combination of the diffuse and specular. They are mixed together. So let's say that I would like to individually treat the influence of one of the lamps, but only on the diffuse component. This is impossible, in fact. This is impossible, and there is no math that can calculate this. So, well, we can choose either this way or the other way. And of course there are a lot of combinations. There are a lot of ways of combining the render passes, and it refers to cycles render passes, to VRay render passes, and to the render passes that come from other applications and other render engines. So it's only a matter of knowledge, of knowing what we are doing and what those passes represent, and then we can achieve really great results without, and this is the most important thing, without having to go back to 3D scene and re-render things. Let's simply imagine the situation of something that renders for, like, I don't know, hours or days, and we made some wrong decision and we have to go back and re-render. It's close to impossible. So preparing render passes, rendering them, and simply not worrying about the disk space. Disk space is not an issue. We should simply remember this. Render anything you can, and then play with this. So that's the story that I wanted to tell you. Thank you. Yes, sure. If there are questions.
Okay, so two simple questions. It is, you show very nice the script you made is loading images. Is it somewhere in the trunk or accessible?
No, not yet.
Unfortunately. But you plan to put it somewhere?
I will publish it somewhere. Okay. When it's more ready than now.
Okay, that's very nice.
Works, but
second question, quickly, don't you think that these render passes from VRay aren't a bit redundant?
Meaning?
Meaning you have more than one way to make a whole image.
Yes, and that's great. That's great. That's why we have more ways of creating the same image. Because if I want to, for example, treat the lamps individually, I have one way. If I want to change some other aspects, I have the second way. This is great that
I see.
this is great that I have more than I really need to recreate the image. It's great.
Okay.
I simply have something, I can use it or not.
Okay.
I prefer this.
Thank you very much.
Isn't it possible actually to render ID with Blender instead of layers? Can save a lot of space on the hard disk actually.
It is possible, well, but you know, the quality of IDs is not that good. If you use the real,
Compositor can read the IDs? Because
Yes.
you were using it. but it
I mean, you mean
exported
the ID pass, or you mean
Like
or you
ID
mean
pass instead
something
of
like
layers.
something like I showed you?
One of which is
render.
You mean something like this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It is not possible to render this in Blender. You have to use some tricks to do it. Yes.
But you can use it in the compositor. Like
Yes.
You can,
I mean, it's like when I use this, I just pass it through a really simple keying node. So I simply take the matte and color key, simple color key. Bam, bam, and let's take a look here, and I pick a color, and I got a mask.
So you could combine all objects IDs to get that image in Blender, yeah?
It's, you know, I saw somebody wrote a script that creates something like that. But the problem is that it requires anyway another render layer, because we don't have the possibility to create our custom passes. It's, you know, you have to create another render layer and then use those funny things in next render layer.
When would you recommend? At what time would you recommend VRay as a render engine for Blender users? Or what's your personal experiences with the two render engines?
You know, I'm working with the passes that come from this and this, but I'm not an expert in VRay, in rendering in VRay. But, well, it's maybe not the right conference to say that we get better results from VRay. Okay? Well, it's like I would say, when you have the access to VRay, use VRay. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Just a
question?
Yes.
There is a Blender version for VRay. It works with the Maya standalone VRay edition. Do you try?
I don't know. The question was, is Blender in general how to render in VRay using Blender?
Exactly.
I don't know. The point is that those passes that I have come from outside Blender. Everything was created in Max and rendered there. So I have no idea. And there is, you know, there is some plugin, and normally you use. It is possible to render using Blender and VRay together when you have a standalone VRay or this standalone VRay. Yeah, standalone. Yeah.
As far as I know, it works quite well.
Yeah.
I mean, we have in Polish community, you probably know Lepo,
Mm-hmm.
using Blender and VRay on daily basis, and he's really
Happy.
Yeah, he's really
Yeah.
impressed. It works well.
Mm-hmm. So it is possible, but honestly, I didn't try.
Yes, I know that it was possible, but how good it works, that was the question. And now it was answered.
I don't know. I mean, he said something like this. He used VRay and Blender quite a lot, but when he got some really big project, he said that it was much safer to do Max and VRay than Blender and VRay because he was afraid of problems that could appear. So, but now he's using cycles, so I don't know. We should ask him, not me.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you again.
Pogubiłem się. Słucham? Czekaj, ale brakuje dużo rzeczy. No to wiadomo, ale brakuje dużo rzeczy, ale ja tu nie zdążyłem, wiesz. Słucham?
Light Select to jest Direct i Specular razem.
Tak, Direct i Specular razem.
Illumination
To jest
to jest tylko Diffuse.
To jest tylko Diffuse.
Diffuse, ale też
Tak.
Direct. A Reflection to jest tylko Specular.
Reflection to jest jakby odpowiednik Indirect Glossy. To jest tak jakbyś wziął Indirect Glossy. I to jest...
Znaczy naprawdę nie da się jakoś matematycznie tego dziwacznie pododawać?
Nie da się, porozmawiać z matematykiem. Mamy niestety, brakuje ci informacji, nie wymyślisz tej informacji. Masz 3 równania z 4 niewiadomymi. Dziękuję.
Nie możesz szukać przybliżając, sterując tym jednym.
Możesz szukać, ale nie znajdziesz. Kombinowałem, naprawdę kombinowałem, bo ja kombinowałem już, żeby na przykład wyliczyć, bo chciałem koniecznie odjąć specular od tych light selectów. Jak weźmiesz, dodasz te wszystkie light selecty i na końcu odejmiesz specular, to ci wyjdzie to, co trzeba. Ale problem jest, że ty chcesz sterować indywidualnie tymi lampami, a w tych lampach indywidualnie masz już specular zawarty. W związku z tym jest taki problem, że zmienisz kolor speculara tam też, on tam już jest.
Od wszystkich 3 lat
Od wszystkich 3 naraz. Nie masz speculara. Ja kiedyś zrobiłem taki motyw, że, znaczy właśnie poprosiłem tego kumpla, bo mi tam renderował właśnie w VRayu, mówię, ty, weź mi te lampy, rozbij. Jak już masz ustawione całe światło, to rozbij mi te lampy, po prostu weź, wstaw w to samo miejsce 2 lampy, w jednej wyłącz Diffuse, w drugiej wyłącz Specular i takie light selecty mi daj. I to jest, wiesz o co chodzi. Jak robisz kopię lampy i w jednej wyłączasz Specular, w drugiej wyłączasz, wtedy masz 2. Jedna działa tylko na Specular, druga tylko na Diffuse'a. I dajesz mi takie light selecty i jest ok. Tylko wiesz jak jest problem? To się pieprzone dłużej liczy.
Na pewno, bo 2 razy.
No tak, ale bez sensu, bo informacji wylicza tyle samo, ale...
Że tak powiem, kombine leci tą samą ścieżkę, tylko po prostu niektórych rzeczy nie wypluwać i tyle.
Tak, ja myślę, że tak.
Ścieżka jest dokładnie
A ścieżka jest dokładnie ta sama. I jak masz 6 lamp zamiast 3, no to masz 2 razy dłuższy czas, no i nie ma przepaść. To jest kłopot.
Work 2 hours on this, check every slider, and then it was